Listen, here's what I believe. I believe that this will be the year that you develop areas of your life purpose greater and further than you ever have before. And I got 3 things in this episode that I believe will help you do just that. All right? So you don't want to miss it. You're listening to the Joshua Mentality. Welcome back to another episode of the Joshua Mentality. It's so good to be at another week here. This is we're at 49 out of 52 weeks, y'all. 49 already. I'm telling y'all, this thing gonna fly by. And some of y'all are like, Josh, please stop stressing me out, reminding me of how many weeks are passing by and how fast they're passing by. So listen, don't worry. This ain't to put any pressure on you or make you feel some type of way. But we should keep our eye on it because that hourglass is going by faster and faster, it seems. So fast, I should say. Fun fact, this is my birthday week. And I say week because once you get into the 30s, you know, I'm at 32. Once you get in the 30s, you don't just celebrate the day. You celebrate the whole week. So pray for my wife because I'm trying to celebrate all week. I ain't doing nothing that I don't want to do because it's my birthday week. All right. So that's the real reason why I love my birthday, because nobody can really tell me anything. That's your excuse. Whenever it's your birthday, you can do whatever you want to do, right? For the most part. But yes, this is birthday weekend, so maybe that's why I kind of feel like I'm on one today. The energy is high, so look out, people. I apologize in advance. If I get on one of my tangents, you know why. I've apologized already, all right? So let's jump into this week's episode. I am excited. Last week we talked about discovery. And let me tell you, that discussion around discovery, I want you to look at that discussion as discovery being the seeds, all right? When you're discovering, when you're digging down into the dirt that is your life purpose, you know, your profile, your makeup, everything you discover, those are seeds. And think golden seeds, because remember I told you you're golden. You are much more valuable than gold. But right now, just for the analogy sake, I'm using that one. Because I want you to have some semblance of reference to how important, how valuable you and your life purpose is. We need it. I tell you this, and I'm going to keep telling you this. There's someone in this world, there's an audience. And I don't mean that in the form of social media, which that's a great outlet. I mean, I'm using a social media platform right here. But it doesn't have to be that way. There can be an audience in your home, an audience in your community, your school, your friend circle. But there's an audience that your life was purposed for, that you are meant to add value to. And my goal is to get you prepared to do that. God has placed purpose in you. And I tell you this every week, and I'm going to keep telling you until it seeps in and you believe it. But anyways, back to the whole seeds talk. Everything you discover, those are the golden seeds. This week, when we talk about development, the development process is putting those seeds into the ground. And now you're developing a tree. Okay? Does that make sense? That's the analogy I want to present to you on the front end of today's conversation. Because I want you to see yourself as a tree that's meant to bear fruit. Now, if you're listening and you've never heard that said that way, when we talk about bearing fruit, it's very simple. It just means your tree, there should be fruit on it. Your life should have something to show for it. And by fruit is a great analogy because trees don't make fruit for themselves. Trees always make fruit for someone else to be fed, for someone else to be nourished, for someone else to gain. And that is the perfect analogy for your life. Everything that God has given you, your strengths, your gifts, your talents, all that stuff we talked about last episode. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, pause it, go back, because that's good stuff. It's going to help you in this episode. But all those things are meant for someone else to come to your tree and be able to be fed off of it. Man, that's good. That's good. I think it's good. If you think it's good, then let me know in the comments. Which, by the way, speaking of comments, I told y'all I'm all over the place today. By the way, shout out to one of the listeners, CM Bressler 5. Thank you very much. Your comment last week about adding some of those details into the comment or the features, the description, that's probably the word I'm looking for. But adding those links into the features, great call, my man or my gal. I don't know which is which, but thank you very much. That was a good call, and I'm glad we got that in there. So shout out to you and everyone else. Please be please be aware. I do read the comments, so if there's some feedback that you got to make things better or to help improve, hey man, I'm listening. So thank you all. But back to this conversation. So discovery, everything you've discovered or are discovering, you're just finding seeds. You're finding seeds, but the rubber really meets the road when you take those seeds and you begin to develop them. And that's keeping in course with those 4 zones that we talked about that help you define success. Now, it may be helpful to recap what those 4 zones were. So remember, it was dreams, discovery, development, and decisions. All those are under the mentality of success. If we want to go another layer up, then remember, we talked about the core 4 mentalities, those crucial 4 areas in our mentality that lead to a life of fulfillment and really fulfilling our potential. And that was the mentality of faith, success, leadership, and wealth. Now, I'm kind of pulling back the lens here because I want you to understand how all this builds on itself. And if you need further explanation, go back a few episodes and catch up to this point, because I think that'll be helpful. I don't want to go through and revisit all of it in this episode, but I did want to pull back the scope for just a second. All right, jumping back into the development conversation, here's how we're going to do this. So 3 points. Let's make this easy. 3 points that I think will lay down a critical foundation in your mentality when you think about development. That's the goal here. I want you to leave here pumped and motivated and inspired to develop those seeds that maybe you discovered after using the exercise in the last episode. So we're building this thing, all right? We're building some structures in your mentality as we tear down some other ones. And here's how we're going to do this. 3 things. And there's going to be a conceptual side, which I want you to understand meaning and purpose. And then I'll wrap that up with a practical thing you can do to bring that to life, okay? So here we go. 3 things that you need to know about development. Number 1, you need to know that development requires that you commit to you. Yes, I said that. It requires that you commit to you. Now, you may be surprised I'm saying that because I just said that development is about the seeds in the ground and getting your tree, and that tree being purposed towards feeding other people. And yes, that's true. But in order for the tree to grow, you have to water it. You have to cultivate it. You have to take care of it. And that takes commitment. And that commitment has to be rooted in time, patience, and a mindset of cultivation. And here's why that is important, because the opposite is what we are almost tricked into doing or to believing, which is this viral development process. Development is not viral. I know we live in kind of a viral society where things can, grow rapidly. I even know that sometimes it looks like success is viral, especially when you look up how some of these people who are YouTube stars, TikTok stars, and it seems like overnight they are making bank. Buku, as some people say. But let me tell you, true development that sustains a lifetime, that gives you fruit and gives you a return for a lifetime, is not viral. It's never viral. And that's a good thing, because when it's not viral, it's rooted in something of substance. And some of you know what I'm talking about because you remember I talk about the dreams and substance. And so that's very important that you need to know. Trees don't grow overnight, especially strong ones, and neither will you. So don't be down about that. Be encouraged, because that means that journey of growth, you will enjoy it. Number one, because it's centered around you and you get to see you up close blossom into all that God created you to be. But number two, you will look back, even though you may not enjoy every step of your development while you're in it. When you get to those milestones and you can look back, like I just celebrated 32, and I can look back over the last 10 years and say, my Lord, look at where I came from at 22 to 32. The gratification, the gratitude, the fulfillment that you will experience is like nothing else. Viral development won't give you that, because viral development just leaves you empty before long. Once you exhaust the viral development, you're left with nothing, because it was never rooted in substance. And this ain't a shot at those who've made those successes of having a viral whatever success and making a living off of that. No shade, no nothing. This is a totally different context and conversation. We're talking about you and your life purpose. And your life purpose, your development is not viral. So make sure you commit to yourself. Understand this is the long haul, and you should enjoy it. If success is your destiny, then that means you can either make that trip on that ship towards your destiny a miserable boat ride, one of those ferry boat rides where you do all the work, or you can make that trip on that ship a cruise ship, and you enjoy it, and you enjoy the waves and the ups and the downs. And some of those moments where it feels like the ground is uneven because you're not quite sure, but you're moving forward anyways, because you know and understand the importance and the commitment to your development. So I went kind of long on that concept, but let's get to the practical piece. Here's how you can commit to yourself. You need to have a plan for your growth. Planning for your growth gives you a sense of direction. A sense of direction leads to a sense of urgency. I can't tell you how many times, how many days if I look back 10 years, I can't tell you how many days I woke up and there was no sense of urgency. There was no feeling of inspiration or wanting to go out and motivation to do anything. It was just the same old kind of empty, dry, colorless day after day after day. And some of you know what I'm talking about because you've experienced that. And I'm telling you why you're experiencing that, because you have not yet planned your growth. You've not yet considered the seeds inside of you as golden. When you do that and you consider those things golden and you begin to put a plan to it, that's when a sense of urgency begins to build in life. And that is a great place to be, man. So here's some examples, because I think it's important that we kind of tie this down, because you may not understand what I mean. When I was in that place where it was, kind of raveling the same Groundhog's Day of just colorless life with no urgency, here are some examples of areas that I begin to develop. Number one, I begin to develop my financial literacy. I went from a guy that had no emergency fund, not even like $100, to begin to picking up a book. A friend gave me a book called, Dave Ramsey. It was called The Total Money Makeover. That's what it was called. And I didn't even read the whole book. I only got to, because everything after chapter 1 gave me a headache. But I did read chapter 1 that talked about an emergency fund. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to plan and develop the little bit of financial literacy I do have with this principle, this golden nugget. Can I tell you, just a few short years from that $1,000 emergency fund grew into $57,000 just from one plan to develop one seed. Come on, y'all. Commit to yourself and make sure you plan your growth. That's number one. That's the conceptual and the practical all in one. Plan your growth. Whatever that area is for you. Maybe for you, it's not finances. Maybe for you, it's leadership. Maybe for you, it's resilience. Maybe there's some areas in your life where every time it hits you, you just lay down. Every time circumstances don't go the way you think they should, you just give up. Maybe your development is developing some resilience. And we can get into that talk a little later. I won't spend a lot of time on that because we'll be here a while. But in future episodes, we'll get into some of the resilience talk. But for now, I just want that to simmer. Let that simmer, that first point. Commit to yourself and make sure you plan your growth. Okay? Number 2, it's important that you know what kind of tree you are. Know what kind of tree you are if you're going to develop yourself. My grandmother used to have my cousin and I, Erin. She had a big backyard with a lot of trees. And my grandmother was smart, so she took that free labor of my cousin and I taking care of these trees. I grew up in an agricultural rich town. It's technically a city, but we call it a town. And my grandmother would have us in the backyard. She had orange trees. She had mango trees, lemon trees, all kind of trees, different sizes. And what we learned very quickly was that you had to take a certain step of care depending on what tree it was. You had to cultivate it and treat it differently. And the seeds of your life that you are going to develop are no different. You need to know what kind of tree you are developing so that you take the right approach in developing it. So what does that mean in practical terms? Well, knowledge is power. You need to know some trees small trees probably require a little less water than big trees. An oak tree might require a little more water than a little lemon tree. There are certain areas in your development that may require you to gain knowledge that's outside of your field. So it may require you to go pick up that book. And I know a lot of us have gravitated to this idea, especially in underdeveloped communities, where we have this idea and we'll say it out loud that we hate reading. Let me free you from that, my friend. Reading is fundamentally your friend. There are people in other countries who are fighting for the right to be able to read. And I'm not trying to turn into your mother on this episode, but I want you to know that it may take that. It may take you stepping outside of what's in your brain, and it may be in the form of a book or it may be in the form of a mentor, depending on what tree it is. If you, for instance, wanted to be a real estate agent, it may be smart, instead of you wasting energy, time, and cultivation periods trying to do it on your own, it may be wise for you to get someone who's done it, who can show you, or picking up a book written by someone who's done it. One of the first books I talked about recently, just a few moments ago, was the Total Money Makeover. But another one was, I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Totally changed the paradigm of how I thought about finances. A few books from John Maxwell totally changed the paradigm about how I thought about leadership. What's that area of development in your life? What kind of tree is it? And are you treating it with that kind of cultivation and attention? Are you watering it with the right amount of water? If that means you have to outsource some knowledge, then outsource some knowledge. Whatever it takes, know what kind of tree you are. Know the amount of water that tree requires, water being in the form of knowledge, and make sure that seed gets that form of development. I hope that's clear. I know there's a lot in that, but turn back the clock and listen to it all over again if you need to. Whatever it takes, okay? Here's a bonus on that one too. Another practical thing, your network. There's all these sayings about your network, and the 5 people you hang out around the most will be the people you turn into. Those things are true, and they all reflect back again to knowing what kind of tree you are. There are certain kind of trees that if you put them by the wrong thing, they will get infected and they will die. Let me say this another way. There are certain seeds in your life that you are trying to develop, that if you are developing those seeds in the wrong crowd, they will die. And I know that sounds strong. It's intended that way. Look at your network and the things, the areas that you're trying to develop. Are you in the right network? Are you around the right people? Do you have the right people in your circle? Because sometimes you might not be the one watering your tree. It might be someone else who comes around, someone else in your network that helps develop that. So I won't spend a lot of time because this is one that's common. I just want to remind you though, network, that's so important. Analyze that area. I recently, even with my own business, I run a business called Lee Malvo People Solutions. And I recently wanted to get into some different networks outside of the one I'm in so that it can grow. So I joined some local chambers. And that sounds a little bit advanced, but take it down to the minimal level. Those areas that you wrote down, their strengths and things that you want to develop. What are some networks that you can get involved in that will help develop those? What are some people you need to cut out of your network that might be poisonous to the development of those areas? If there are people in your circle that's trying to convince you to go out every day and waste away your seeds, then that might be someone you need to cut out of your network because they're hurting your development. Just a thought. I ain't here to get too much into your business, but I want you to know that has a great impact, a tremendous impact on your development. So that's a little bonus. Keep that in mind, your network. Let's put a bow on this thing by wrapping it up with this last point. And I opened up talking about this, and that's measuring how much fruit you are producing. Listen, everybody's fruit ain't gonna look the same. And you'd be doing yourself a disservice to compare your fruit to your neighbor's fruit. No. You need to measure your fruit, okay? Measure your fruit. We got 49 weeks left in this year alone. When we get to the end of this 49, how much fruit will your tree have? And I say that not because I want to put pressure on you to feel like you have to have a lot of fruit, but I want you to have at least one piece of fruit. There needs to be something that shows that is a return on this year from your development efforts that you can measure and say, hey, that grew this year. You need to determine what that is, because what you don't measure most likely will not grow. And on the contrary, what you don't measure in the negative sense most likely will grow. That might have confused some of you all. So get this. Negative things in our trees don't require development or cultivation. They will grow all on their own, like weeds. You don't have to cultivate a weed to grow. It grows all on its own. So measurement helps us keep the weeds out and keep our fruit growing. So make sure, this is the practical piece, make sure that you are measuring your growth. Check that tree for fruit. And that you can determine what that time frame is. Maybe you give yourself, think of it how we look at when we are in the gym or trying to work out. We may give ourselves 90 days and check it every 30. For you, it might be something totally different. But the overall point I want you to understand and really to sink in is, number one, your growth does not have to look like anyone else's. Your fruit does not have to look like anyone else's. But number two, it should be growing and you should be measuring it. If you're not measuring it, you're doing yourself a disservice and you are not growing or bearing fruit at the pace that you could be because you're not measuring it. So we talked earlier about planning it, and then we're ending here talking about measuring it. And I believe when you get to the end of these 49 weeks, your tree will have at least one piece of fruit. And if that's all you have, then that's better than what you may have had the year before. And so that's worth celebrating. And then next year, seeing how much you can add on top of that. All right? I hope all this has made sense. I knew coming in, taking kind of this conceptual approach, using trees and seeds and fruit, I knew that might be a little difficult, but I hope that it made sense and that this is something that you can use when you think about your own development, and hopefully it makes it a little easier and takes some of the pressure off and kind of inspires you to get your tree growing. Get them seeds in the ground. Get those seeds in the ground and start developing them, okay? You've been listening to the Joshua Mentality. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Actually, I got to thank y'all. I saw on Apple Podcasts, we got a 5-star rating. How about that, TJM Tribe? That's awesome. So thank you all so much. Continue to like, subscribe. Let me know how this is helping you. I hope it's helping. I hope it's blessing you. And as you all know, and I remind you every week, remember that success is your destiny. See you next time.